Welcome to Anita Talks History and Genealogy, and I'm so glad you all can join us. Before I get started, please hit the like and share button, and please subscribe. If you can afford a paid subscription, please do so. And also, I have a lot of merch, really nice merch. In fact, I have my candle with my beautiful face on it. And we have mugs, and we have hats and hoodies, that all of this helps keep the channel up and running. This is the only news that we have. This is the only history we're getting, is the history that we come on and share with our audience. And we're hoping that you, the people whose history was stolen, that you are there listening and getting the message, and it's making you curious so that you too can start your research. And they're not going to tell you who you are. You, myself, we have to find this information. And I thank my ancestors, because I believe my ancestors gave me the clues as to where to go. My mother shared as much as she knew, and I used those clues. But then I would be in a certain place and get this intuition to look over there, and I would find something, and it was just like a gold mine for me, just digging up nuggets of truth, not only about my ancestors, but about the communities they were in. And they were always a part of a community, as much as they could be. Remember that, when they weren't being, sold or stolen or, sent away. So this is the first book that I wrote, Notes and Documents of Free Persons of Color. And I also wrote a revised edition of it. And Notes and Documents of Free Persons of Color, this book contains a lot of just what I was finding. What I was doing was copying documents, and I put them in here so that people would see them, because there was a lot of information. There's these books called Henning Statutes at Large. And in those books, they talk about how they redesignated the Indian people, and they became mulatto colored. They could be anything except Indian, and except they could not say what village they came from or have the names that were given to them by their ancestors. They were to be assimilated into the churches. In Virginia, it was predominantly the Episcopalian and Anglican churches that they were joining, and then they were given the names of somebody that sound, like John or Billy or Jim or James or Charles. They were given English names, and then once they were, accepted or assimilated into those churches, they had to walk around with documents showing that they were, members of a church. And that was the only way they were allowed to move around freely. And the Pinns had a red cross. They had to wear red crosses to show that they were Christians. So their whole thing, the Christian thing didn't just start. They came here with that mindset that these people were to be assimilated, forced into becoming Christians, even though they had been here over 20,000 years, thousands and thousands of years, long before the European even knew what a Christian was. The natives had been here practicing their own religion and not bothering nobody, okay? And these people decide to come with this religion that they stole and reconstituted and then spit it out as a European Christian, whatever, theology with a white Christ, a white Savior. And that's what they did, and that's what they presented, to the Indian people, the native people, throughout the Americas. They did the same thing in Australia with the Aborigine people. And wherever they went, they took their beliefs and put them upon the people who they were there to conquer. And, fortunately, their lie is unraveling in front of them, because sooner or later, your lies catch up with you. There is nothing proven that you are superior. The only thing that makes you superior is you're willing to steal, kill, and destroy children, women. You don't care. They don't care. Anyway, so I'm speaking on my Pinn ancestors. And the reason I am is because of Jennifer Horsley, my cousin, one of our cousins who is also Monacan, who has, had documents approved by the Virginia, legislature. So we're, moving into being accepted, having them accepted as being the original people from the region which is called Lancaster County, Northumberland County, in Virginia. But the actual village extends into Maryland. There's a Wicomico parish in Maryland. So they were on the Wicomico parish. They were in what is called the village, and it was, they called it Wicomico. In other words, the Europeans called it Wicomico. And so once they put a name on it, you could not come back and redesignate it. It's still Wicomico parish today here. And then there's Wicomico County in Maryland, and all of that was one village that was chopped up. Lancaster County has a part of the village. Northumberland County has part of the village. And then Wicomico County in Maryland has part of the village. But the Pinns were the original people of that land, and they were indigenous to the land. And so a year or so ago, my brother and I were part of, we listened as this young lady who did an archaeological dig, and she was sharing what she found, and we were there to hear her, give her master's thesis on our Pinn ancestors and what she found at the archaeological dig there in Lancaster County, Virginia. So the first book I wrote, which is this one, Notes and Documents of Free Persons of Color, actually talked about the village and the Pinns. And the second book I wrote, which is easier to read, the revised edition, it's more, reader friendly than the first one. And so my first book is mainly used as a reference because of the citations, and it's like has all of the documentation proving our descendancy, our history, and connections to the Pinn family. So my ancestor, Robert's son, was Rawley. And then Robert had another son named Robert, and Robert married Avarilla. No, not Avarilla. Robert married Ann Weaver, who was a Cherokee woman. And they stayed in Lancaster County, and they had several, children. I had a bunch of children. But Rawley, he left and he went to Yorktown. And then during that period, he met his wife, who was Sarah Red Cross Evans Pinn. So that is our ancestor on Rawley's side of our lines. They went up into Amherst County, and I'm thinking he was run out because Robert, the father, he disappears from the records. The last record that I've seen him in was when he was in church, and the church warden had assessed him a fine, and he had to pay the fine in hogsheads of tobacco, like 30 or so, and because he had missed church and he had not paid tithes. And this was before it was put in the Constitution that we had the right to choose our religions. The indigenous people were being forced to practice, to assimilate into these Christian people's churches. The Anglican Church and the Episcopalian Church there in Virginia, where the villages were. And so Rawley, when he left, and he went into Yorktown, and he met up with John Red Cross, and he met Sarah. I believe Sarah, my ancestor, John Red Cross, is like an uncle. He is Sarah's brother or half brother, and they eventually wound up in Amherst County, Virginia, and that's where they were when the Revolutionary War started. So John Red Cross and Rawley Pinn were in the Revolutionary War, and they fought at Yorktown. For George Washington was their commander. That was like the last battle of the Revolutionary War. And also at Yorktown was Raleigh's brother, Robert, and Robert's sons, James, Billy, John. I think there was another son there named Robert. I don't know. But anyway, so the sons were there. Robert Pinn, the junior or the second, he was at Yorktown. And so was Rawley. And so was Robert's sons. And Jim got killed in the battle, at Yorktown. But John, there was John, Billy, and Jim. John, he lived to a ripe old age. He was a seaman, and he went to Massachusetts. He was like a seaman up in Massachusetts, and he filed for a pension from, because of his service in the Battle of Yorktown, and that's where I got, some information from. And then I eventually, when you file for the application, you've got to show a roster or whatever. So he showed all the information that he needed to get a pension. And he was I think he was in his 80s or something when he filed, but he was up in Massachusetts. He was a seaman, and Rawley was in Amherst County. And after the Revolutionary War, before the Revolutionary War, he was a farmer. He had land before the Revolutionary War because Sarah, his wife, her father, who was Charles, had left her land. So these people were indigenous, and they were leaving each other land. And what happened with the Evans was that the Europeans who wanted their land and their labor redesignated them as Negroes. not even mulatto, Negro. And the forebearer of Sarah, when you go back on the lines, was Jane. Her name was Jane Gibson, and she was born about 1640. And she was smart enough to know how to go to court and tell that they had taken her children and redesignated them as Negroes and enslaved them. So it took several generations of fighting. After Anne had passed, each generation continued to fight to find out where those children were sent and why they were enslaved. And so when Sarah and Rawley were married, they were up in Amherst County in their own land. And this is when they were finally freed. And she was able to say, I'm Saponi. My people were free. My people are Native American. My people are indigenous. And we're Siouan, we're Saponi, we're Tutelo, and then they became part of the history of the Wicomico Indian Nation. So when I was looking for Sarah, or when I found Sarah, and I connected to her, that's when we were accepted into the Wicomico Indian Nation. But while I was finding her, I also found the roster for Rawley Pinn and the Amherst County militia that he was a part of that marched to Yorktown. So they're on their march to Yorktown, they joined up with Marcus de Lafayette, the French colonel. I think it was a colonel. Anyway, but they all marched to Yorktown together. And so that was the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Rawley Pinn was in it, And so when I found Sarah, the reason I found her, because I found Rawley first. I knew that he came from, Lancaster County before I knew who Sarah was, because people told me when I first started doing the genealogy that it's harder to find the females. And it's basically true. It was harder. I don't think I would have found Sarah if she had not been married to Rawley. So I'm looking for him, and I found her, but I didn't think I would find any more documentation on her. But another family member had been doing the research about Jane Gibson, who was the ancestor of Sarah Red Cross Evans Pinn. And that's how we connected up, because of the people that are doing the research. And it really, it's like you have to keep your ears open. The first thing I would say was to find out where they were, how long they were there, who they were connected to, who else was there, because you may not find anything on them, but they were all communities. This is what I found when I was looking for Robert Pinn, for Rawley, that when they would move around, they were still part of a community. So him going to Yorktown, he was part of the community there that Sarah, his wife, was part of. Even though these are two, the Pinns were Algonquin. Those are Algonquin. They were, they are supposedly part of the Powhatan. They're the same ethnic group as the Powhatan. And then Sarah is Saponi, Siouan, but they joined up. And John Red Cross, he was in the Revolutionary War too. So they were forming community as they went along, you know. And so that's what I was following. I was following what part of what community were they a part of? Were they a part of the mulatto community? Were they a part of the indigenous community? Because even when the law would say, oh, you're not indigenous, you can't say you're Indian, they would just not, they may not say it out loud, but their habits and other things would tell you. Even the papers that these people were keeping, their description of them will tell you who these people were, what did they look like, and a lot of, when like they were, when they were describing Rawley, or excuse me, not Rawley, yeah, Rawley, because when they first, and there was a tax, they were taxing these people on land. This was after the Revolutionary War. And so they went up to his house and called him a white man. So that tells me right there that he was, as some, it must have been the winter time or something, because they called him a white man. Then the next time they came, a couple of years later, they called him a mulatto. So what was going on? Was it wintertime and he was light-skinned, and then summertime and he had a tan? But I think what it was by then, when he went to the household, Sarah was there, and then there were some other people there, and he was looking. Whoever this census taker was, we know it was a white man. Oh, these people are dark. They're not white, because we thought he was white a couple of years ago, but now look at him. And plus, he got dark people up in here. They said so they just called the whole household mulatto. That's the way that they did stuff. They're not the smartest people in the world. Some of them are the most devious people in the world, but they're not the smartest. So anyway, but this is the information that I got. And I was able to, write down little notes on that. And that Rawley Pinn, who had been forced to be Episcopalian earlier, he joined the Baptist church and he became Anabaptist. And if you ever look up Anabaptist, it means he's against slavery. So Rawley Pinn was Anabaptist, and the family, some of the family said that's probably what got him killed, because he was against slavery. But he was Anabaptist, and the way, if you look at the Baptist church now, you wouldn't think that at some point they were against slavery. And it was against the law for Rawley Pinn to be aligning himself with the Baptists, because, like I told you, they were Episcopalian, and they had to wear that pin. And then he's up in Amherst County, and this is after the Revolutionary War, and he's joining with other people up in the county. And becoming a Baptist minister. And there is a church up there, Fairmount Baptist Church, that is still in existence today, that Rawley Pinn founded. So, do with it what you may. But they were using their religion that, to control us, to tell us to bow down to them, not to God, not to Jesus, to them who think they're superior, still think they're superior. Do with it what you may. So I'm just so proud of Jennifer and what she's doing, the research that she's doing, and it makes it easier on those of us who started when someone else comes along and someone younger and picks it up, and they're going to do greater things than even I did or